man who made my omelet this morning told me he had the best job in the world. I want you to think back to your 8-year-old self. What did you want to be when you grew up? Most 8-year-olds want to be doctors or pro athletes, or these days, professional YouTubers. I once knew a kid whose greatest aspiration in life was to be a garbage truck driver. Anybody want to guess what his dad did? There was a time when people had little say in what they became. They would simply do what their parents have done. But now times have changed. My mom is a seamstress, an artist, and a beautician. None of these was ever on my radar. My hope was to be a jungle missionary, astronaut, famous singer. Here we go, astronaut, jungle missionary, famous singer. There we go. Sound impossible. I had it all worked out. I was going to go for 4 years to the jungles of Panama, translating the Bible for the Kuna people. When it was time to come home on my home assignment, I was going to fit in a space mission and a singing tour, and then I'd head back to Panama again to work more on the Bible translation. Such fun to dream, right? But by the time you get to college, the dreaming demands decisions, and the pressure builds to decide what to do. It's one thing to dream about being an astronaut. It's quite another thing to make it happen. You don't just wake up an astronaut one morning. You have to get trained first. And where do you even begin? Can I confess to you, I don't even know what astronauts study. I don't even know what my major would have been. I never got to the point where I was that serious about it. Are any of you tired of people asking you what you're going to do when you graduate from Biola? Or are any of you prospective students tired of people asking you where you're going to go to college and what you're going to major in? It's a fair question, of course, but the pressure to try to figure out a life path, to figure out what to be when you grow up, can become debilitating. This week, I learned that 80% of the students at my daughter's university changed their major at some point during their studies. 80%. So I'm curious, I can't actually see you, but for the sake of each other, how many of you have already changed your major while you've been at Biola? I can sort of see you. Oh yeah, there we go. And how many of you are thinking about changing your major? Okay, so we're under 80%, but this could be you too. I changed my major from intercultural studies to Greek, but still ended up becoming a missionary. My husband stuck with his major. He was a worship arts major, but became an accountant. The truth is that our world is changing so fast that many of you in this room will have jobs that have not even been invented yet. When I was a kid, I never dreamed of being a YouTuber because that wasn't a thing. So if that's the case, how do we figure out what we're supposed to do? How do we choose the best path that God has for us, for the way God wired us? So this morning, my hope is to alleviate some of the pressure that you're feeling to figure out what to do with your life. I can't erase the question altogether, but I do want to resituate it in a way that removes some of the angst. So right here at our fingertips is a powerful and inspiring answer to the questions, who am I and what am I supposed to do with my life? And this answer will help us navigate the path ahead. It's found in a very unlikely place, the Sinai narratives in Exodus. We've already heard from Exodus 19, and I am going to talk about Exodus 19, but before we do, I need to set the stage for our passage by talking briefly about Exodus chapter 3. God has just appeared to Moses in a flaming bush at Sinai. He answers the question of what Moses should do with the rest of his life, a question Moses actually wasn't even asking. In a dramatically clear way, he says, "The cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Wow. Talk about vocational clarity. Moses could be celebrating, but his feeling of inadequacy drowns out this good news. Moses says to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Who am I? Who am I? Moses is apparently oblivious to his own qualifications for the task. This is the guy who grew up in the palace in Egypt, who would have known Pharaoh's language, he would have understood how the court system worked. He may have even had a personal relationship with Pharaoh. Moses has been shepherding sheep in the wilderness for the past 40 years by this point. He knows how to survive in the wilderness. In short, Moses is well qualified for this task. But note that this is not what God tells him. God's response goes in another direction. Moses asks, "Who am I?" And God answers, "I will be with you." I will be with you. In other words, it doesn't matter who Moses is. It doesn't matter what qualifications he has. The thing that matters most for the success of this venture is that God is with him. With. This is the case for every one of us in this room. It matters very little who you are, or who you think you are, or who others think you are. It matters all the world that God is with you. But there's more. In Exodus, we have this incredible symmetry between the life of Moses and the experience of the Hebrew nation. Maybe you haven't noticed this before, so here we go, ready to have your mind blown. Moses, first, is rescued from Pharaoh in Egypt. He escapes. Then he travels through the wilderness. Then he meets Yahweh at Sinai. The God of Abraham appears to him in this flaming bush. And there, in that passage that we just read, Yahweh promises his presence and commissions Moses to return to Egypt to begin the cycle all over again. The Hebrews are rescued from Pharaoh in Egypt. The Hebrews travel through the wilderness. The Hebrews encounter Yahweh at Sinai, and it's at this point that they see this dramatic display of God's presence. Thunder and lightning and clouds of smoke and an earthquake. And then we're told Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. So Yahweh descends on Mount Sinai to be with them. Given the parallels with Moses' own story, doesn't it make you wonder if we're about to read about a commission? After all these things, God appears to Moses and it shows him his presence. Then he sends him. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what happens. Let's dive in. We've already heard the passage from Exodus 19. I'm going to read it again. Just imagine yourself in their shoes, traipsing across the desert. On the first day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel." And here's what he says: "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. And the people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. Tucked in this passage is my favorite Hebrew word of all. Standing behind the phrase treasured possession is the Hebrew word segullah. Can everybody say segullah? To call them his segullah is not God thinking of a warm fuzzy, like as if he's trying to say, "Aw, I sure like you guys. Thanks for being here." No, segullah is a technical term used in the ancient Near East for a highly regarded treaty partner. Out of all the nations, Yahweh has selected Israel for a unique role as his ambassador. Their election is not about being better or more qualified than anybody else, but rather about being given a job to do. They're picked to do something. The Israelites are chosen to represent Yahweh among the nations. That's what a segullah does. And the way they do their job is fleshed out in the following chapters. It's by obeying Yahweh fully and keeping his covenant. They obey the law. So in the very next chapter, they get the 10 Commandments, which are eventually inscribed on 2 stone tablets, the unmistakable sign that they've entered into a treaty or covenant, because every treaty was ratified with duplicate copies of the treaty inscribed on 2 stone tablets. These tablets call them to exclusive loyalty to Yahweh and to behave in a way that reflects his character. So number 1, Yahweh is to be their only God, the only one they're to worship. Number 2, Yahweh warns them not to bear his name in vain. That is, not to misrepresent him among the nations. By choosing Israel as his segullah, his treasured possession, he has claimed them as his own. In effect, he has branded them with his name. His intention is to be with them from now on. Their primary task is to live in a way that demonstrates his character to a watching world. So what does all this have to do with us? And how does this help us pick our major? The Apostle Peter makes the connection for us in the New Testament in his first letter, which is addressed to Gentile Christians scattered throughout Asia Minor. Although this group is unlikely to share a single race or political status or social identity, this is a very diverse group, he claims this about them. You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Here, Peter takes the very covenant titles from Sinai, titles that indicated Israel's special status among the nations, and he applies them to the nations, to Gentile believers. It is a bold move. It's audacious. It's rooted in Peter's bizarre vision that he has in Acts chapter 10, the one with the sheets of unclean animals lowered from the sky. According to Peter, followers of Jesus are included in the covenant that God made with Israel at Sinai. We share the same identity. We're God's segullah, and the same purpose to represent him. You are his treasured people. We can waste a lot of time obsessing over who we are, trying to define ourselves by what we do or what we plan to do. The far more important question is whose we are. We are his treasured possession. And here's the deal. When we understand whose we are, we discover why we're here. At Sinai, God told the Israelites that they had been chosen. They were his. And when we place our faith in Christ, we become his too. But belonging is not the end of the story, it's only the beginning. Belonging to God means we have a job to do. Our vocation in the world is already decided. It's not up to us to figure out what we're here for. God has already revealed our purpose. It's not on hold until you graduate from college. And it's not a job that depends on figuring out the perfect major or the career that's a perfect fit. When we understand whose we are, we discover why we're here. I spent the past 5 days in San Diego with many of your professors, your Bible theology professors, at a conference for Bible nerds. We spent 5 days literally listening to each other read our papers out loud to each other. It sounds like a really good time, I'm sure. But let me tell you, all the greats were there. N.T. Wright was walking around one point. I was just a few feet away from him. Like all of the biggest names in biblical scholarship were at this conference. But can I tell you about the most transformative conversation I had in these past 5 days? It was in the train station, waiting to catch the train to come up here, when a homeless man sat down beside me and struck up a conversation. I don't even know his name, but it was the most healing and empowering conversation I had in 5 days. He poured life into me. He saw me, and we had the most amazing connection. That man doesn't have a job. He doesn't even have a house to live in, and yet he clearly understood whose he is. And he was living his best life as God's treasured possession. When we belong to God, we bear his name. We are his representatives. Other people are watching us to find out what God is like. It matters just a little what you decide to do with your life, and it matters a whole lot how you decide to do it. Your actual job title or the size of your salary are not what defines you. Any job, with or without a paycheck, is an opportunity to demonstrate faithfulness to God. Any job is an opportunity to honor God by loving others. Remember, Israel's role as Yahweh's segullah was expressed by their obedience to him. So if you choose the path of obeying his commands, living as someone who knows you belong to God, it's much easier to make lane changes down the road, because God promises to walk with us as we get this figured out, as we make particular decisions about what to do or what to major in. And as we respond to life's challenges that are outside our control, we don't make these decisions on our own. God's not sitting up there with his arms crossed, looking down at us and hoping we figure it out right. He's with us. And when we understand whose we are, we discover why we're here. So let me give you an example. Dr. Ken Way is one of Biola's beloved professors of Old Testament. You might not know him because he teaches exclusively in the grad school. But I first met Dr. Way at one of these academic nerd fests in 2013, where God used him to bring deep encouragement to me during a very difficult time. Dr. Way is a Bible scholar through and through. He's written books and articles, led trips to Israel. He's been on faculty here since 2007. Dr. Way leads the Old Testament department for the graduate school and seminary, and he's beginning work on a major commentary on the book of Exodus. He absolutely loves his job, and he loves being part of this community. Last May, Dr. Way began experiencing strange symptoms. His gums hurt. He bruised easily. He had skin lesions and was out of breath, and so he went to see a doctor. Within a matter of days, the diagnosis was in. Dr. Way was engaged in a fight for his life with leukemia. Though he's home now, he's spent most of his days since May at the hospital or the cancer treatment center. He's not been able to teach, and he's hardly been able to write or read. In short, this disease has robbed him of his ability to fulfill his duties as a professor at Biola. But here's the profound truth that emerges from our looking at Exodus chapter 19 this morning. Leukemia has not robbed Dr. Way of his vocation as God's treasured possession, his opportunity to be God's segullah. Dr. Way has not lost an inch of his vocation. For the time being, his particular duties have changed, but his purpose is the same. He's no longer representing God daily on Biola's campus. Instead, he's representing God to nurses at the hospital, to doctors, and to the hundreds of people in this community and around the world who are watching and waiting with him for healing. This is why it's less important for you to figure out exactly what you're supposed to do with your life than whose you are. What you do is ultimately out of your control, but how you do it is entirely up to you. Dr. Way didn't choose this, but he can choose how to respond. God is with us. We are defined by our relationship to him. It's not up to us to figure it out on our own. We belong to him. And that changes how we think about our future. We don't have to chart a new path. We walk his path. We bear his name. We follow his pillar of cloud. We represent him. We can do that as a missionary or an astronaut or a famous singer or a garbage truck driver or a stay-at-home parent or a lawyer or a homeless man or an engineer or a cancer patient. The job title matters a whole lot less than the choice we make to live a life of obedience as his treasured possession. God's answer to Moses' question, "Who am I that I should do this?" was, "I will be with you." When we understand whose we are, we discover why we're here. And ultimately, that's all that matters. If this message has struck a chord with you, I'd love to talk with you afterwards. As Landon said, I'll be outside in the courtyard area with my books. You're the first audience on the planet to get a chance to buy one. I wrote this book with students in mind. This is not an academic book. In fact, there was just a review released by Library Journal this week of my book, and they say I am recurrently witty, which really excites me. I feel like I want to read the book again and say, what did I say that was so witty? It explores in greater depth the things that I've talked about here today, making the case that Christians need the Old Testament if we're to fully understand whose we are and why we're here.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.